I'm joined now in studio by Julie Teigland. She is European IPO leader at accountant Ernst Young. Thanks very much for joining us today. We do seem to be seeing a raft of IPOs, or we're certainly talking about them anyway. Tell me, what does Glencore do to the market in the UK? Because there haven't been very many here. And if this goes off successfully, does it kind of give a boost to sentiment, for instance, in terms of IPOs?
I definitely think it's a positive sign in terms of IPOs, especially something as unique as Glencore, which is focused on the mining and energy industries, with a global footprint, if I might say, listing both in London and in Hong Kong.
And what is it that's making Glencore so attractive at the moment? Because it really does seem to be creating an awful lot of buzz.
I think there are probably two things. One, I would say the pure size of Glencore and the numbers involved. But also, I think you have to remember Glencore deals a lot in commodities. And with the increase of commodity prices, as well as that emerging market touch and feel to those commodities, I think there's an increased amount of interest in companies like that.
And what is the outlook for London for the rest of the year on the IPO front?
Oh gosh, if I could just pull out my crystal ball, I'd be happy to tell you. I think definitely probably more positive than today. And I generally like to talk about something that we call the love curve. And if we think about that, about those letters LUV, that's exactly how I view the IPO markets recovering. L for Europe being a relatively flat recovery. U perhaps for the US, and you've seen that now, the first quarter, the US market's returning strong on a quarter basis, and V for the Asian markets, where we see a fast recovery and a positive IPO outlook continued for the rest of this year.
Right, so you're really expecting to see a lot more in Asia as well, are you?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Now, when you look at the sectors that you're seeing, are you able to look at them in the same way and actually be able to identify sectors that are more interested in IPOs at the moment?
It's more difficult from a sector perspective. However, we could say if we look at the quarter and then predictions for the rest of the year, we can come out with 2 or 3 highlights. One being industrials, continued focus on natural resources, including mining metals. And then I would put technology up there in the top 3.
Right. And why is it that those become sectors where there are a lot of IPOs at the moment? Can you track that and work out why they are so attractive?
I'll say that's a little bit more difficult. I can say when you look at the emerging markets and the relative opportunity in those markets, I think that industrials and natural resources play higher to the emerging markets and the opportunity there, and therefore are attractive right now.
Now, of course, we're looking at LinkedIn's IPO as well. And when you think of those new technology IPOs, they're very difficult to price, aren't they?
They're difficult because you're pricing a lot of hope and opportunity, which makes that harder than something hardcore as industrial products are producing something, or even something that's a commodity where it's actually listed on a separate market.
So people want to be looking at those and really trying to work out whether or not they're making their value, and therefore, you know, I suppose in the future they'll be better at pricing them, will they?
I'm not so sure we're ever going to get good at pricing those, because there is a potential of hope and opportunity in judging that market, which makes technology IPOs such a fascinating space.
Now, when you came up with that acronym LOVE, I'm interested to know why it is that Europe is having such a sort of a slow recovery, a lag almost compared to the US and emerging markets. Is it all to do with our other issues like sovereign debt crisis and things?
I definitely think some of that is definitely playing a role. I also think the lack of an extreme rebound in terms of economic recovery also plays a role. If you think about it, I've come out and said, give me a month where we haven't had any negative news in Europe, whether there's not a global economy that's perhaps falling down, where there's not a huge transaction that just fell apart, a bank crisis, and I could go on and on.
I'm sure you're not the only person who's thinking that these days. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.